Hi everyone. So we're here at Selfridges as part of their Festival of Imagination. Do you want to do a test? Testing.
Hello.
We're here to do a fantastic tech talk, and aptly, I've got two of fashion's biggest innovators with me. My name's Lou Stoppard. I work at SHOWstudio as the editor there, and I'm sat here with SHOWstudio's founder, and obviously an acclaimed image maker and film director, and my boss as well, so I have to be nice. It's Nick Knight.
You don't have to be, you can be.
Really
honest.
put you on the
Be
spot.
horrible to him, please.
And then also, obviously, we've got the great Nicola Formichetti, who's artistic director of Diesel. So, yeah, feeling a bit intimidated, but it's fine.
I'm so nervous.
Oh, don't be nervous. It's a nice crowd.
If I vomit, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, yeah.
You can vomit.
Part of the show, we can all vomit.
Yeah, it's good.
It'll go viral.
I want to start with a really kind of, it's quite an open-ended question, I guess, but I think you'll both have such interesting things to say, which is, it seems to me like you both really adamantly believe that the future of fashion is online. Why? Nick, you can go first.
Thanks, Lou. Why do I think the future of fashion is online? Because I think fashion as a medium suits online. It's about being dynamic, it's about being immediate, it's about movement, and all those things are very true of the internet. So that's why I really think that fashion's best suited to being online.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
concise.
when SHOWstudio was launched, when was that, late 90s?
2000,
2000.
November 2000.
You know, it was such a, so ahead of its time. And in a way, Nick kind of created this platform for designers, stylists, and creators to show fashion in a more of a 3D way. And now it seems kind of almost normal, but at that time, it was quite, it's taking now 10, 15 years to be almost accepted. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a journey that still needs to evolve.
Tell me, why did you want to found SHOWstudio, Nick?
Well, lots of different reasons. Partly it's like frustration of working in print. Partly because it was kind of clear, sort of in the middle of the 90s, as the internet came about, that there was a new platform where you could do different things. Fashion's probably best represented in movement as opposed to being a still image. If we were starting recording fashion now, we hadn't got the history of magazines, or we hadn't got the history of fashion photography, we'd almost certainly go for fashion film now. There's no reason to create a garment to be seen in movement and then make it as a still. So probably the best way to show a garment is in movement. It was clear the internet could support fashion film as a new medium. As Nicola said, the SHOWstudio's been going for about 15 years. Fashion film's starting to find its feet. If you compare it to the birth of fashion photography, when in about 1910, Vogue decided, I guess it was just one Vogue then, but they decided that actually fashion illustration wasn't the right thing for them, that fashion photography was the right thing for Vogue magazine. So about 1910, it took to about 1930 for there to be much more than 2 fashion photographers in the world, or 2 really good ones. So fashion film's got the same sort of trajectory now. We're seeing only a few great fashion filmmakers. It takes a while to get to grips with a new medium. So really fashion film is developing, but I think that's fine. Really the sort of what we understand as fashion photography, which is the kind of 1960s, and people like Avedon and Penn and Burt Stern and David Bailey, all those guys, they sort of defined fashion photography. But it took till the 1950s and 1960s to get defined. We're really early on in this development, but I think really sort of, seeing a piece of clothing in movement is how the designer would intend that piece of clothing to be seen, and so that's its best representation.
Yeah, I think we just keep creating, make mistakes and keep evolving, and I think it's great that there's a platform like this at the moment.
One thing I want to talk to you both about is this idea of sort of accessibility and the internet's role in democratizing fashion, because one thing, obviously, it's very dear to us at SHOWstudio, we stream photo shoots, and it's kind of opening up a very closed process. If you open a magazine, it's quite rare to actually understand how you got to that final image. But similarly with you, Nicola, like you did, when you're at Mugler, you sort of live streamed your fittings. And
I mean, I started actually, one of my first fashion film project was for SHOWstudio. When I used to work with Kim Jones, we created this, instead of doing a fashion show, because we didn't have any money, we created a film so that lots of people could see it. And we launched the SHOWstudio with Toyin, and also all the early Gareth Pugh fashion films that we did. it was just a great way to connect with people. And yeah, with Mugler, I opened the backstage so that we can. I don't know. For me, it was just good to have lots of opinions. While we were doing fittings, I could say, "Oh, okay. Should I put this red shoes on or blue shoes on?" I could ask the community, for their suggestions.
You're big on that as well. You like talking to people. You like that interaction.
I love collaborating, and it's more fun. And you might not be there, but you can be there in spirit.
Yeah.
In mind.
But I think that mood of sharing and that mood of being collaborative feels much more now, and much more sort of thing that I think the internet's very good for, and that's sort of moving forward. I think there has been, and weirdly in fashion, a lot of sort of closed doors, and a lot of people very frightened, photographers who won't show you their techniques, and designers who won't show you what they're about to do. But actually, it's sort of opening up. I think it's much more healthy to share things. I think it feels much more generous of spirit.
Yeah, good karma too.
Yeah, and that.
Have you noticed? Have you both noticed a kind of changing balance of power? It's quite a tired thing. People always talk about, bloggers and people on social media being able to critique fashion in a new way. But have you both really noticed that kind of the power has shifted from magazines or critics saying this is what you need to wear?
I was really excited when early bloggers start going to fashion shows. I was like, yes, finally,
Why were you so excited? Just a new voice?
Yeah, it was always, there was only, a couple of journalists and,
Give us a wave out there.
But I was so excited to have different opinions. And then, yeah.
You quite like the criticism element of it, don't you, Nick? You're very...
No.
No, but you're...
What makes you think that? I like to be criticised. I love it.
You're very
You ever seen my video Bound 2?
Oh, God.
Oh, you don't want to bring that up? Okay.
Well, we can talk about Bound 2 if you want.
Do I like criticism? Nobody likes to be criticised in a hostile way. It's always good to get feedback. I think that's more where I'd feel happy with the answer.
Yeah.
I don't like shutting things away. I didn't start SHOWstudio to expose or to demystify the fashion industry. It was actually just to show you that it's to show the public, so anybody who wanted to see SHOWstudio, that what I was living in the fashion industry was a hell of a lot more exciting than what I was seeing being represented in the magazines and newspapers. The things that I would see happening daily in my studio, I thought, well, people should see this because it's exciting. Yeah. It was never to sort of demystify it or debunk it or anything like that. It was always just to give more access to something I thought was wonderful.
Because you've said it's the process, like you mentioned this before as well with the live fittings, but often what you see in that process and in that learning journey, you say this with your editing, your work in post-production, often a mistake on an image can be more exciting, or I guess trying a pair of shoes was something that you don't end up doing. That's where you get some more ideas. Yeah. Is that part of the thing as well, that journey?
Totally, and then now I'm bringing that excitement into a brand, so people can see how I started to to the final product. I think you get much more excited like that. So.
I guess I never really liked the position where an artist, and I use that term in a very large sense, would present their work unexplained on a catwalk or in a gallery, and that was in some way better for people to see it with no explanation, And the idea that you could talk to people throughout the creative process just seemed to be much better for communication than just presenting a kind of, to some degree, slightly arrogant position of, here's my piece of work, try and guess what I was talking about. I don't see anything wrong, and I see all art as communication, and therefore the sort of more fully you can communicate, the better. So I've always felt much more at home with the idea that I can show what I'm doing and talk about what I'm doing whilst I'm doing it. And also, it's quite nice for people to realise that people like Nicola or Gaga or whoever it is don't just walk into a studio and just create like that as if it's easy. It's hard slog, but that hard slog, that difficulty, and that finding the right thing and doing it wrong and then trying it again, etc., is actually all very exciting and very sort of, it's the process is great. Some people love being in the process and they stay there.
It's interesting though, because I think a lot of people are a bit apprehensive of showing that element of sort of getting things wrong, which leads me to perhaps one of the most controversial questions I'll ask, but I think it's important nonetheless, and you both hinted at it, which is the way in which sort of fashion, I think, has traditionally been nervous around the internet, whether it's a high fashion brand being reluctant to sell online, or whether it's magazines having a sort of rather shaky path with establishing an online presence, whether that's social media or a website. Why is high fashion Why is high fashion nervous around the internet?
Because it's easy to use fear. Oh, hello?
Brittany.
It's the easiest trick, to use fear. You create this thing that you cannot really touch, so you want even more. And I think if you create your fashion like that, it's very it's negative. And that's why fashion people are scared of the internet.
Yeah.
But I don't know they all are. I mean, it depends. It's a generational thing as well. I mean, a designer like Gareth grew up on the internet. Walter van Beirendonk. I mean, there's certain designers who have thrived on the internet. Ed Slimane. There's certain people who use it very well, and it's become their platform. But certainly, using Gareth as the example, Gareth used to do all his kind of, his casting on the internet. He used to find the people to work in his studio, and then he started showing fashion films as opposed to being, instead of showing a catwalk collection. So he's really, it's been his vehicle, if you want. So I don't think all fashion designers or all of fashion is scared of it. I think you've had 100 years of fashion establishing itself through magazines, through the catwalk, through that process, and that was a very well-functioning machine. It started to misfunction and not be so right anymore when the internet came along and allowed people to see the shows live, and for people to have a voice. Now the models have something like Cara Delevingne with 4.2 million followers. There's no magazine that can touch her, so she's got the audience by herself. She doesn't need a magazine. So and I think the magazines getting online is a slightly weird thing. It's like theatre trying to get on TV. Magazines are great as magazines, and what they should do really well is what they were created for. Fashion magazines should show fantastic fashion photography, and they can't run it down and make it dumb. I know something that you know because I go on about it all the time, but back in the 1970s when Richard Avedon would go and shoot for American Vogue, he'd shoot for 2 weeks to get a 10-page story. Diana Vreeland, Richard Avedon would go off to Japan. I'm sure you've all seen the film. He's there for 2 weeks to get 10 pages. Now if you work for American Vogue, you get 1 day. How do you expect to get the same level of fantastic fashion photography? So they've run down the one thing that they're there to create. And it's that brought rise to magazines like Jeffson's Dazed and Confused, and ID and The Face and all those magazines that started when actually, the mainstream fashion magazines were not sort of supporting fashion photography, which was actually their thing. And that's gave, people like Jeffson a great reason to start a magazine like Dazed. But it's got to go on. You've got to keep on supporting fashion photography if your magazine is to be relevant. It's very hard to make a magazine relevant anymore. The shows are live. People are seeing the shows live. They're wanting the clothes live. They don't need to wait 3 months to see it in a magazine anymore. And soon they'll be able to buy from the catwalk. So you've eclipsed the whole thing. So you don't need to wait 3 months to see it done by me or Mario or whatever it is in a magazine. You want to see it live. And that's why we do our shoots live now. Because actually you want that instant thing. You want that instant hit. And that's largely the dynamic of fashion.
Totally agree. And then you see the young generations now on Tumblr and Instagram creating this new, using their own device to create these unbelievable visuals. It's really, really exciting. And we should, sorry.
No, tell me about Tumblr, because you have a great love affair with Tumblr, and you source inspiration from it, you cast off it. Why do you find it so exciting?
Well, because I don't need to talk about it. No, because you get to communicate with visuals, with photos. You make friends through photography and videos and memes and GIFs, and I think it's a very for me it's like reading lots of different magazines, because you can have your own different kind of pages and make it your own, and that's how I do everything. I find all my castings, all my references. Sorry, Google, but I don't use Google anymore, not so much. I use Tumblr referencing because it's much more focused. Sometimes you type something on Google, it's so, you get so many different things, but on Tumblr it's much more
curated.
Yeah, curated.
Yeah, it's interesting because Nick was obviously mentioning the style titles before. You mentioned The Face and ID and Dazed and stuff, and it gets me to this idea, which has been talked about quite a lot in fashion, which is that the internet is kind of the new street. That's where you go to see the amazing fashion and the young people doing something different. Do you feel that? Do you get more excitement looking online than you do going to a club or going?
No. It's both. Yeah, it's digital and physical. If I was always looking on Tumblr, I'll be a sad person. I think you need to have this human touch and no, I love going on the street and going to clubs and bars and meeting people and going to concerts and things like that.
But do you not think we have more tribes online now than we do actually physically in the street? You know, that tribal mentality of kind of, you know, you've got your mods and your rockers. You don't have that in the same way anymore. That
No.
seems to be more online.
Yeah, true.
What do you think, Nick? You're looking at me quizzically.
Yeah, trying to think of an answer for your question, Lou.
Sorry.
Why don't you rephrase it?
You're like, ask me something else.
Yeah,
No, I just mean, because you find a lot of young talent online. You seem to find that
Yes, I do find a lot of young talent online. It's a very good place because people who are doing great things, you know, they rise. I mean, you kind of see them. And we do find a lot of young, you know, filmmakers or illustrators, you know, they come online. You see the work. It's great. I mean, that's the kind of nice thing. That's the huge shift, the huge cultural shift that's happened over the last 15 years. And it's a massive shift. You know, before it would always be that you had to have somebody else to give you reason. So if you're writing a book, you have to take it to a publishing house. You have to say, okay, I'll read your book. I can make some money from selling your book, so we'll publish it. Same thing if you're a record deal, a film, photographer, anything else. You always have to go for a third person. Now on the internet, you put your book out there. If it's rubbish, nobody reads it. You know, if you take a photograph, you put it on the internet, and nobody likes it, then who likes it? So, you know, now it's taken out that middle person, which has fundamentally changed the relationship between the artist and the audience. The artist and the audience are much, much closer now. They're not, you know, I mean, part of the reason I started SHOWstudio on a sort of ethical thing, if you want, because I just thought I don't want to just spend my whole life making images to make somebody else money, or even to make me money. I don't want to just create work for money. And I've sort of felt it's a slightly hypocritical and difficult position to maintain, I warn you. So anybody who wants to question me afterwards, I'm not going to be able to put up a good argument for it. But my moral feeling is I don't want to create work for money. I actually don't like money particularly. I don't like wealth, I don't like power, and I don't like fame. That's how my personal moral code is, if you want. So part of the reason to start SHOWstudio was actually to allow people a platform where they were creating for the love of the art and not creating to sell more product for somebody. You know, so, and I understand the relationship between what I do and making money for third parties, all that sort of thing, and that's fine. But I didn't want that to be the only thing I ever did. So I had a sort of anti-money moment.
What about you, Nicola? Do you not like money and fame? No,
I like money. No, that's
you
why
can have mine.
Thank you. He's such a
you've
punk.
got it.
No, but you know, we live in, you know, I love seeing someone wearing my clothes, you know, and if someone buying your clothes, it's one of the most exciting things you can do. So, you know, to promote the clothes I design, I try to involve young talent and try not to be, you know, very exclusive and things like that. And, you know, like the last campaign that we did for the tribute collection, we did the whole thing on. We shot everything on the smartphone, cast the entire cast on Tumblr and Facebook, and you know, we opened it, and feels so much better.
Yeah, talk to me about that shoot, because obviously it's a shoot you worked on together, and it was all shot on your phone. Why did you want to work with Nick on that? Why did you want to shoot it on a phone?
So I created this 2 capsule collection before my collection comes out in April, the big fashion show in April. I wanted to do a very small, like a denim and a leather collection, which are very DNA of Diesel. So, but instead of promoting it in magazines, I just wanted to talk directly to the consumer, to the customer. So I said, let's not do like a proper editorial campaign, but do something purely online and digital. And then, you know, he's the.
Why do you like shooting so much on your phone? Because you do everything on your phone pretty much.
I do
now.
increasingly do everything on my iPhone now, or nearly everything. I mean, just to put a bit of history into my photography career, I used to shoot on an 8x10 camera, which is this big, and you have one sheet of film at a time. It's not a roll film camera, and it's on a big column tripod, which is like having a washing machine on a lamppost. It's that easy to work with. But that for 15 years was the camera I worked with. So I don't come naturally from a kind of digital, you want sort of background in that way. I come from a very purist photography background. But when photography stopped, and my belief is that photography stopped in about the mid-90s, there had to be a new medium happening, and slowly and surely it's become, and we have now a new medium, and it's best expressed with this thing here. I shoot everything on this now, simply because it suits the way I work. there's you can swap from stills to film at the slide of your thumb. You can take quick rapid fire burst. The quality is really fine. Why wouldn't I? The light, the sensitivity of light is much, much greater than the camera. I was shooting for a friend of mine, Matt Williams, last Monday. And at one point I thought, I better take some pictures on a Canon. So I went back to my Canon, I picked it up, looked through the viewfinder, I thought, oh, this looks so dull. Just picked up my iPhone again, and you press the back of the screen, the thing lights up. It's, it just suits the way I work now. Weirdly, I get a few hostile emails from this. Somebody said they'd like to take me outside and give me a good slapping, unless I stop working on my iPhone. So obviously some people get really upset about that sort of stuff. But, for me, it works for the way I want to express myself.
I mean, it was really weird to see him shooting actually with an iPhone, because normally I'm used to see him in front of this huge camera,
Yeah.
like, and then last time we did, it was like this, like this.
Yeah.
And it's that odd thing when you're on a
exciting.
shoot and everyone else doesn't scale it down, so there's still as much hair and makeup, everything's huge. And then there's just Nick with his little phone looking like he forgot his camera.
It's kind of weird. I mean, it's actually one of those taboos that when you find you're doing it, you have to say to the model, look, I really am, my iPhone, I often do this, don't worry, because they look at you like, why is he just taking selfies? I mean, kind of, it's a sort of kind of, you actually have to justify using it. But I reassure you, it's Apple iPhone S, whatever it is, it's fine.
It's great. We use these two apps. Your favorite one is Glitch.
Yeah, Glitch.
Glitch.
Yeah.
Who actually, he contacted me.
Vladimir.
Yeah, Vladimir.
Yeah, Vladimir.
And,
Good.
and we should create like a crazy app together.
Yeah, talk to me about some of the apps, because you mentioned, is it Glitch or Glitch?
It's Glitch.
Glitch.
It has an accent on the E.
Oh, does it?
It's
Okay.
made by a
Also,
Russian.
Yeah, 'cause
and
that's one of your
Megaphoto,
favourites.
And Megaphoto.
Megaphoto.
My favorite is Megaphoto.
Yeah, Megaphoto's the one
Yeah.
you introduced me to, which is
Yeah.
great.
So
We should be able to do your kind of show and tell on the back screen here.
Everyone's downloading it now. Give it a go. Glitch.
Megaphoto,
and
MEGA,
Megaphoto.
photo, is it FO or PHO? I don't know.
And what I love is that anyone can basically copy his photography now.
Yeah, I love that too.
It's great. It's like, okay, maybe I could just do this at home. And
Is that part of actually? I've never asked you that. Is that part of what you like about it? This idea that everyone has access. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people will have access to the same equipment as you. There's not that sort of differentiation of you have to have a camera to be able to shoot.
I've never really liked the idea that one's defined by the equipment one uses. And sure, it's about your soul and your artistic beliefs and your vision, all those sort of things. Not about the piece of plastic or glass you have in front of you. I've never been a photographer, or I never was a photographer, that liked what's the opposite of a camera file? I'm a camera hater. I don't like it. The camera is a piece of plastic and metal that gets between me and you. I try and take your portrait. It's a chunk of stuff in front of us. And I don't want that. I want you, and I don't want the camera. So I've always loved it when I'm freed up from that. And when I used to work on the 10, I don't know what I'm using. I'm very sorry. It's in my vision, my line vision. But when I used to work on an 8x10 camera, I used to hold a cable release, which means I could come and stand by you. And actually, that felt a better rapport. And I just never liked the idea that you hide behind the camera. I never liked the equipment thing of it. It isn't about that.
I want to ask you two questions about the actual camera. The lens. How's the iPhone lens? Or
I haven't got a clue. I really have no idea. It just does its job. This sort of.
What about resolution?
In what way?
To make it bigger.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it depends where you want to go with it. If you look at a billboard in like one of those huge 48-sheet billboards, if you go really close to them, they're like potato print.
Yeah.
They're like kind of dot by dot. So, I mean, yes, there's a difference, but you wouldn't compare painting in the same way. You wouldn't say, oh, there's abstract expressionists, they're just not as sharp as a Dali or a photorealist, we can't have those. You happily accept a Matisse or a big brushstrokey merchant.
Yeah.
But, so it's weird when we talk about photography, and photography is supposed to be accepted as an art form, that it's this fixation with focus that becomes the whole thing. And actually, there's been great photographs. I mean, if you want to talk fashion-wise, someone like Sarah Moon or Deborah Turbeville, incredibly, Sarah Moon would use little sort of 8mm film negatives to print to get all her grain. It really is about the emotion behind the photograph and not about the equipment used to produce it. You'd never say that in any other art form. You never say, oh, come on, Jake and Dinos Chapman, which paintbrushes are you using or which glue are you using to stick that cardboard together? Who cares? Who cares what pen a writer writes with? And nobody should care what camera a photographer makes their images with. If you like the images, it doesn't matter if they're blurred, sharp, big. It's just about whether those images move you or not, whether they change your way of thinking. That's what's important, and not what camera you use. So that's sort of where I am with it. Thank you.
It's not the end, so you can't clap too much. I want to take things in a slightly different direction, and it's something you actually touched on, Nick, when you were talking about Cara and her kind of sort of Instagram might, which is the idea of the internet in removing this sort of, in allowing people to become great at what they do, or a sensation, or a celebrity, or whatever you want to call it. And this is a question for you. I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but I'm interested, especially when you worked with someone like Gaga, you must have really felt that, because if you just sent her out in an outfit, it would go online. It'd be so easy. You didn't have to put her in a magazine. That element was completely removed. You could make someone a sensation just through those
suddenly
channels.
You're alive.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, she's on the street, and then next minute it's everywhere on TV and paparazzi and everything. So it's a really weird feeling at the beginning. Actually, she's the one who told me about Twitter and things like that, because she was actually really communicating with her fans, and that was so beautiful. She was really like listening to them, and taking advice and just seeing if they liked it or not, and that was almost having like a real friend. And that's why I started Twitter, actually, because of her.
That ability to kind of communicate back and forth. Is it ever intimidating, though? Did you find it quite strange when you worked with her that those traditional channels of kind of establishing someone or criticizing someone were removed? It didn't matter if a magazine hadn't taken her photo. If it was on a blog, then as many people would see it.
Because suddenly you're on the spotlight, and all these people are criticizing you or loving you, and it was tough at the beginning, actually. It was because I was always kind of behind the stage doing my thing, and in a way, she's the one who kind of pushed me on the limelight.
And here you are now.
Yeah,
blossomed.
I hated it, actually, at the beginning.
You hated it?
Yeah. But then you meet all these amazing people, and you're like, okay, I can do it.
What was the point where because there must be a point where you kind of started to really love working with the internet and loving that immediacy and doing your fittings live. That's very different to kind of hiding behind. Can you remember that moment, or was it very organic?
Let's see. I think the whole, it was when I found Rico, this zombie boy, this boy covered in tattoo, on Facebook. And I told my team that I want to use him for the first campaign of Mugler. And then next thing you know, Nick saw him, and we want to use him for Born This Way music video. And then now he's in a movie with Keanu Reeves, and it's kind of a
bit magical.
Yeah, it's surreal, and I think these things could happen. So
is that part of the appeal for you as well? That kind of the haphazard nature of it, I guess, that someone can become something, or you can stumble upon something, and then it so changes your whole vision.
Sorry, is that the nature of what?
What?
What's the question?
I was like, you
asked it so long ago.
No, I was going to ask you if that's part of the appeal for you as well, that kind of haphazard nature. You can stumble upon a reference and it changes your vision. You can stumble upon a person and they suddenly excite you.
Yes, I'm still not quite sure where the question's going.
You're really being mean to me.
No, I'm sorry, Lou, I didn't mean to be mean to you. I'm just trying to catch up.
You just dozed off.
No, I didn't doze off at all. I was thinking about Nicola and how he did such a fantastic job with Gaga.
Okay.
And how that, every time she walked from her hotel bedroom to the limousine, it was your catwalk. You dressed her. She was, with the respect, I know that Gaga's her own being, but you dressed her. And every time you sent, millions of pictures of that particular moment go out. If you do a fashion show, not necessarily that many pictures go out.
Yeah.
The sort of the involvement of a huge celebrity like Lady Gaga really changes the fashion world. She really did. She had lots of young designers that you dressed her in. Became well known and became. That's
we made sure that she always, she knew the names of the designers she was wearing, so she could
talk about them.
Talk about it. She was using herself as this.
Yeah, that's an incredible. And that's to do with part of the wide, massive reach of the internet. I was just interested in that idea.
Yeah.
They kind of work with Gaga, and I work with Gaga and I work with Kanye, and those are massive people. Massive in terms of their reach, their public reach. It's incredible. So any slight thing you do with any of those people gets seen everywhere.
But it's not. I guess what I'm asking is, it's not just about those massive people. There's the element that someone can become massive in a very haphazard, strange way because of the internet. You can put something up and it goes viral. And I'm interested in that, if that's something that excites you, that you can stumble upon a person or a reference or a thing, and that can explode.
Yes.
Great.
Answer the question.
Resigning tonight.
No, of course it is that. But I guess what I'm to be nice and try and answer your question helpfully.
Thanks.
Yes, it is kind of exciting that you can just launch something and it goes global. And I think that's what's exciting there is the fact that we're in touch with a global audience.
Yeah.
You know, the SHOWstudio, when we work on it, it goes on. We were doing a live broadcast this morning. We did one all the way through the weekend, but it was a live broadcast this morning on the couture. You know, and it's being seen in Australia and South America and Mexico, and people are writing in and saying, I've stayed up all night to see this and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, that's exciting. And you know that sometimes you can touch something and it does go across the globe. That speed of communication is exciting.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, this takes me to something that I want to ask you both about, actually, but I'll start with asking you about it, Nick, because I know it's something that's very dear to you, which is the live streaming of catwalk shows, which really has sort of changed how fashion's presented. And I think to a lot of the people sitting here, it probably feels like it's been something that's around always, because it seems so natural now. But it's something that you worked on with Lee McQueen, wasn't it, with the Plato's Atlantis show? Tell me about the process behind that.
There was a few sort of tentatives at live streaming shows before. I think Helmut Lang did something really early on. But it never really caught off. And I've been talking to Lee McQueen probably 2 or 3 seasons before Plato's and saying, you know, you should really do something. You should really sort of live stream because people want to see it. And eventually it made sense in his world and how he wanted to do it. And it was a great moment. It was a moment, you know, for a start, the Plato's Atlantis show was fantastic because Lee McQueen sent down these sort of, you know, these robot cameras down after the models. So they would travel down like huge black beasts behind the models and then swing round and travel up the front row. So all that sort of front row was exposed to the world, which was kind of exciting in itself.
I remember he was filming all the front rows.
Yeah.
You could see them behind.
Yeah, so you saw all the kind of, you know, the Terrys and the Jeffersons and the Anna Winters and, you know, all you guys who, sorry Jefferson, keep bringing you into it, but all this, you know, well, it's normally, you know, it used to be a private club for about 300 people. Who all looked really bad tempered most of the time for being there. It was this private club that only a few people were allowed access to, and when we did that show, it turned it inside out, it globally broadcast it, or theoretically it did.
The website crashed.
The website crashed.
Thanks for the reminder, Nicola.
I was getting to that, don't worry. I wasn't going to gloss over that. What happened was that SHOWstudio had no idea that Lady Gaga, this new American singer, was about to launch Bad Romance single at the end of it. And just before the show went live, Lady Gaga tweeted to her 6 million or whatever they were fans at the time, well, I'm going to launch my new single. So there we were expecting about a traffic of about 10,000, 20,000 people, and the computers just melted, which is quite an interesting sight. The computers melted, the computer operators melted, I started to melt. It really wasn't a nice moment. Could be the worst moment in my life.
Really?
No. It was kind of interesting in retrospect.
Where were you?
I was right at the back in the tech room with the melting computers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was with Gaga at that time. We were like, oh my God. Look, we couldn't see anything.
Melting.
Yeah.
But it's fine. That's what happens when you try and get 6 million people through quite a small door. You know, the kind of the building goes over. But what it did do, other than actually on a very personal note, really upset me because I wanted to do something for my friend Lee McQueen, which didn't manage to do. But on a more of a sort of important note, I guess, it said to people, look, these fashion shows, should not just be seen by 300 people who are a bit bored to be there. There's a whole world of people out there who want to see them. And on top of that, if you work with somebody like Lady Gaga, it gets your message from, you know, 20,000, 50,000 fans, just 6 million, 10 million fans. That's a huge audience. And it was a watershed in fashion. I mean, in the fashion industry, just so I thought, hold on a moment, we can't be doing this anymore. We can't be showing to this little group of people when so many people we've got. And they're still trying to find a way of making it work. Yeah. Anyway, that was 5 years ago. Now, about 70% of the London shows are streamed online. You know, so it's a huge change that's happened, and it changes the dynamic. Because, you know, as I started saying right at the beginning of this, you know, that people see the stuff as it happens, as it hits the catwalk. You see the clothes, and you want them then. And you know, we're very close to being able to sell them from the catwalk. So it's all changing.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and thank you too. It's a privilege, as ever, to hear you. So thank you.
Thank you.